ancient times, the word witch has been associated with evil. During the 17th century, witches were being put to death across Western Europe. America would experience its own witch craze in Salem, Massachusetts. Today, Salem attracts tens of thousands of visitors each Halloween for the festival's haunted happenings. But more than 300 years ago, witches were nothing to celebrate in Salem. Along with the Pilgrims, the Puritans began coming to colonial America in 1620. The Puritans had become disillusioned with the church in England.
What they wanted was a better church. The Church of England was a kind of a compromised church, half Catholic, half Protestant. And the simplest thing was the word Puritan is they're really Protestant.
Many Puritans settled in Salem, Massachusetts. Salem was divided into two communities. Salem Town, located next to Massachusetts Bay, and Salem Village, nestled a few miles inland.
Salem Village was more of an agrarian, somewhat backwater community, whereas Salem was the more sophisticated, mercantile town.
Salem Village had its own parish, led by the Reverend Samuel Parris. His wife Elizabeth was often sick. They lived with their two daughters, a son, and a niece. It was inside their modest house in the year 1692 that the Salem witch hysteria began.
What you had in 1692 was a confluence of a lot of disruption for both socially, economically, and religiously. And Salem Village was a broken society at the time, and just ripe for something bad to happen.
Reverend Parris often left his 9-year-old daughter Betty and 11-year-old niece Abigail in the care of the family slave, Tituba.
She was a Carib or Arawak Indian brought over from Barbados by Reverend Parris. She was a woman of color.
One day, Tituba told the two girls fanciful tales of her life in Barbados, which included magic and voodoo. Like any secret too good to keep, word spread to more girls in the village to join the magical trio.
The girls were telling fortunes by putting egg white into a container of water and trying to discern a shape and then predict who they would marry. And of course, that was against Puritan belief.
Not long afterward, Betty and Abigail began acting strangely, having fits and going into trances. When the village doctor found no physical explanation, his diagnosis was spiritual, the work of witchcraft. The doctor's conclusion played into long-held Puritan beliefs that spirits populated a vast invisible reality. Soon, more girls in the village appeared to be afflicted.
Instead of separating the children, they kind of let them stay together, which is always a bad thing.
It's like a chain reaction. Once one of them got away with it, others began to imitate it.
To Reverend Parris, the devil had come to Salem. When he pressed Abigail and Betty to tell who cast the spell over them, little fingers pointed to Tituba. On February 29, 1692, magistrates from Salem Town charged Tituba with a civil crime of witchcraft. She denied it. But then, Tituba did something that would create sheer terror in Salem. She confessed.
This changed the complexion completely. Why did she say that? Well, maybe Reverend Parris decided to beat it out of her. Maybe she figured this was the only way to avoid the hangman's noose.
Everyone is harboring secrets, and that builds up a tremendous pressure to relieve yourself and to bring it out into the light.
An important part of any confession was to name others. Tituba accused two women in the village, Sarah Osborne and Sarah Good. The thought that more witches could be in the village created mass hysteria and more accusations. Some men were accused, but it was mostly women who were singled out. Patriarchal views held that women were irrational creatures who were more likely to be in league with the devil. Many feared the dreaded knock at the door. The accused were dragged from their homes, down to the village meeting house, to appear in front of magistrates.
They're looking for did you find the devil's compound? Did you go out into the woods and have an alternative form of baptism?
One of the biggest challenges for magistrates was finding evidence to identify a witch. One method was to use midwives to examine a woman's body for the mark of the devil.
You were made to take your clothes off, and that would be humiliating for a Puritan woman to have to do that. Interestingly, sometimes the midwives found mud.
Another test used water. Water was thought to be pure and would therefore reject a witch. If she floated, she was guilty. If she sank, the woman was innocent. By the summer of 1692, nearly 200 women and men in Salem and surrounding towns were accused of witchcraft. On June 2nd, the first woman was brought to trial, an outspoken tavern owner named Bridget Bishop.
I'm as innocent as the child unborn.
There was a lot of evidence given against her at her trial. Much of it today would be laughable. Depositions were presented in which men would talk about her apparition coming to them at night.
This form of testimony based on dreams or visions was called spectral evidence.
It's that the devil has the capacity to take the form of a person, and that person comes to you with a kind of vision or hallucination and does something bad to you. So the theory was the devil could enter anyone's body.
Bridget Bishop was found guilty. She was the first to be hanged at the gallows on June 10, 1692. 1 month later, on July 19th, Sarah Good suffered the same fate. More executions continued into autumn, until Massachusetts Governor William Phipps finally stepped in over concerns that people were being falsely accused.
Governor Phipps' great claim to fame is that in October he said, I'm stopping the trial. I'm stopping the trial until we get clarity about the criteria for deciding who is really a witch and who is not.
By then, 19 people had been hanged, including 14 women and 5 men. One man was literally pressed to death under a board with heavy rocks. At least 5 people died in prison while awaiting trial. Tituba was released from jail and sold to another family. 5 years later, in January 1697 in Salem, more than a dozen people admitted to false confessions against the accused. The shame of the Salem witch trials would help bring an end to witch executions in colonial America. 3 centuries later, in 1992, the victims were honored with a memorial. The image of the witch would evolve once again, but the negative perceptions persisted and took new flight.